Today, we discuss rookie tight ends. We're going to give you our tiered rankings on this position that honestly, we think is a little bit deeper than we thought going into the season. Like, we are pretty excited about these tight ends, how we can build around them in this draft to help us win Dynasty Fantasy Football Champions. Stick around for all that and more. Because we record these two at a time, I asked JP, what episode should we record second? And he said tight ends, because I'm really excited to talk tight ends. So tell our audience real quick before we actually dive into our tiers, why are you excited about this year's tight end class?
Like you said, it's the depth. I just think there's so many guys. I've got like 17 guys that I think I would be willing to roster, like post rookie draft. And I just want to take a shot on. And also, just the fact that the NFL is using tight ends more, I think it's a perfect time for a strong, deep class to be coming in. In 2025, we saw the highest 12 personnel rate since 2007. And like I said, there's a lot of interesting players here. So I think there's going to be some guys that break out that are going to be taken later. It kind of happens at tight end from, a decent amount, I'd say. Those guys that are around 3 or 4. I think we're going to see some this year. So I'm very excited about this class.
The old cycle in the NFL, we've got the defenses playing 2 deep safeties. So now we're going to run it up the gut until they bring that extra safety down. Then they're going to start throwing it over their heads till they adjust again. Definitely interesting to see the tight end usage coming next year, because I do expect it to increase again at least next year. Anyways, why don't we jump into our tiers, Justin?
Absolutely. And we're not going to jump into a large tier off the bat. We've been seeing this a lot lately. QBs, RBs, and tight ends, all a one-man tier 1. That one man who truly just broke the combine, Kenyon Sadiq. I mean, until another guy came in and broke some of his records, we saw him set records. Just from an athletic standpoint, at the age of 20, we know he did not have a lot of production, but the athletics and the projected probably top half of the first round draft capital, we're seeing a lot of that in mock drafts. Definitely first round pick. How high? Guy's kind of the limit, right? He could be single digits even. Like, it's going to be very interesting to see where he goes and just where he is expected to go in the draft alone. Honestly, that's enough to set him in a tier of his own. And do you guys really have much concerns about the production or the lack thereof, or do you think, based off of what we know, that it's worth the risk?
Lack of production should always be a red flag, especially when you're talking about top-end prospects. So yes, I'm a little concerned, but I've seen a few people give some extra context that's made me a little less concerned. We know tight ends typically take a while to develop. He's 20 years old. He's an early declare. So that's not surprising that he's a little behind. Breaking down Sadiq's production years 1 through 3 versus other high-end first-round drafted tight ends years 1 through 3, it was very similar. A lot of those guys had their biggest year in year 4, and we're not seeing Sadiq in year 4. So does that mean he's going to take a little longer to develop in the NFL? Maybe. I don't know. But that is a little extra context that makes me a little bit less worried about the lack of production. Still definitely a little concerned this year. I'm not certain he's someone we're going to be able to count on. So if you're taking him, mid, late first, I would be a little wary. We've seen a lot of good rookie production from tight ends lately. I think it'd probably be a little bit more like Loveland, where you can't start him most of the season. Maybe you can a little bit at the end, though.
Yeah, I mean, I do wish we saw a little bit more. I think it's a little bit overblown how bad it is. I mean, tight ends, they don't produce a ton in college. The leading receiver last year was somebody we're going to be talking about soon here is Eli Stowers with 769 receiving yards. So if you're getting a 600-700 yard receiving season from a tight end, you're doing really good. He wasn't that far off of it, and he also he had the most touchdowns at the tight end position in college also, which weighs into dominator, which his dominator is actually right on the 70th percentile, which I want to see 70th percentile and up. He's right at that mark, so I'm not super concerned, but it is a little bit on my radar.
Definitely on our radar, definitely should be, but we're going to really weigh much heavier the draft capital, and if it's where it's expected to be, that's why he is definitely separated in tier 1 versus tier 2. JP, you just talked about him. Talk a little bit more about him and where you had him. I remember we had a tie-breaking vote in me to separate them out. Do you agree with that separation, or are you more on the page that they should be together?
Man, I'm not sure. It's tough, and I think it's just the fact that he's not somebody I can think can hold up in line as a blocker. But if you're just looking at the receiving part, like, he definitely has the case to be in tier 1 with Kenyon Sadiq. He's actually the tight end leader in career first downs per route run in the Power 4 since 2015. It's him, and it's Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, and Brock Bowers right behind him. And this is somebody who didn't even come out of high school to play tight end. He was a quarterback coming out of high school. He competed to play at Texas A&M, couldn't make it. He went to go play tight end at New Mexico State with Diego Pavia. And from that moment, he played tight end. He was just really, really good. And the athleticism with it is insane. So I do think his receiving upside is very, very high. It's just a matter of how much are you going to play, because you can't really hold up that much as a blocker. But like I said, 12 personnel is at an all-time high right now. And since we've seen in the 2000s at least. So it is the right time for him to be coming in. If they're going to be running 2 tight end sets, he can survive, seeing a higher snap share without being that inline guy.
He's basically a power slot wide receiver. If he keeps the tight end designation, that's a pretty good thing, to be honest. I'm a little bit concerned about his blocking. I know you don't get fantasy points for blocking, but you get snaps for blocking, and you get fantasy points by getting snaps. That's my main concern with him. That's why I don't have him with Sadiq personally. I still think he's a great prospect. I think the upside is undeniable. A little more concerned with his usage and his landing spot than I am with other guys.
Yeah, and I think that's a good reason to separate these two guys out, right? If we believe that a team drafts him with the intention to use him knowing his limitations, I think it's very probable. Especially, we talked about, I think JP throughout a round 1 Stowers is really when we might see them in the same tier, but we don't know what that is. We can't project that, so I think it's only responsible to separate them out right now. That being said, I think we're all going to agree that the difference between Tier 1 and Tier 2, we have that as a little bit closer than the difference between Tier 2 and Tier 3. Not that we don't like these guys. When we're looking at Max Clare, we're looking at Michael Trigg, and we're looking at Justin Jolie, although, JP, you might actually like him more than you like any of us in the podcast or any other player we've ever heard you talk of. At this point, none of those guys have day one, in the realm of outcomes. While we like them, they're a little bit lower on. JP, start us out by gushing about Justin, and I just wish it would be about me instead, but it's fine. I'm okay with it.
Yeah, just to start out, his breakout age is at 18.2 years old, 98th percentile. He started at UConn, played 2 years there, 2 years at NC State. His first 2 years at UConn, he had no quarterback his freshman year. They passed for like 1,400 yards total. So his production was down. So I'm fine with that, of course. And then the second year, he led all of UConn in receiving. At NC State, in his third year, he played with KC Concepcion, and he outproduced him. He led the team in receiving. And at Concepcion, he had a down year. I think there was injury stuff going on, but he led that team in receiving, which is very impressive. He suffered an injury in his senior year when I think he was on his way to like a massive breakout. But I think he's a good athlete who gets open. He has the best career contested catch rate by a tight end in PFF college history for Power 4 guys with at least 25 contested targets, 66%. And also, he has the second best missed tackles forced per attempt number in this class on his career. Now this year, you see on the screen 0.12. Since he suffered his Greg Jennings hamstring touchdown when he limped into the end zone, it's an awesome play. Since that point on, when he came back, he didn't force another missed tackle. I think he was playing hurt. So if we didn't see that, honestly, he might have had one of those Eli Stowers type of years where we'd be propping him up. Wish we got some combine numbers on him, because I think he's a great athlete. He looked really good the Senior Bowl, but we don't have those hard numbers. But I love the statistical profile and what I see from him.
If you've been listening for a while, you know I'm a pretty big fan of Michael Trigg. If you haven't, I'm a pretty big fan of Michael Trigg. He has also bounced around kind of like Jolly. Trigg started at USC, then to Ole Miss, then to Baylor. He has a basketball background. He was recruited as a basketball recruit coming out of high school. Love to see that. His wingspan is gigantic. I don't have the exact measurement, but it's one of the biggest wingspans we've seen. 2.18 yards per out run, pretty solid. 0.34 missed tackles forced per attempt at his size is an insane number. When you watch him, he makes some highlight catches. You can see the basketball background. You see him go up, box out guys, go up and make crazy catches. Kind of similar concerns with Stowers. This guy's probably mostly going to play power slot. I've heard he's maybe a little bit better of a blocker than Stowers, but still concerned. We'll have to see where he lands. And, if they're going to actually try to use him correctly. If he is, though, highly, highly productive player who makes some really great highlight catches. I just think he's really fun to watch. And I really hope he goes somewhere where they're going to let him make plays because, he's been really fun to watch last year in college.
My tight end 3 at this point, I really love just the athleticism, the size, and what I think he can do. But I do have to, give some credit here to Max Clare. Although, of course, we've talked a lot about this. If you've watched our previous content, our previous mock drafts, he had a very down year as a Buckeye. We've kind of brought up these main points in the past. The Buckeyes, they're not a tight end school. They ask their tight ends to be a huge part of their block, a huge part of their run game, and they are wide receiver university, right? So he just is not quite going to, and no one there is quite going to really be putting up those type of video game numbers. On top of that, he was learning a new system. They asked him to bulk up a little bit, and he just wasn't really on the field as much at the beginning of the season as we were hoping to see. We saw a lot of production at Purdue in the past, and we're just giving him a pass for the Ohio State lack of production, and just really hoping that the NFL also is doing that. So if he's drafted to a decent spot in the 3rd or 4th round, that we think he might be able to find some playing time, I think we're definitely very interested in him as a player. So let's go ahead and let's move on to tier 4. JP, do you mind reading those guys for us real quick here?
Absolutely. We've got Tanner Koziel, Jack Endries, Dallin Bentley, and Daquan Wright. And we were just talking about Daquan Wright pre-show, and David was really had his eye caught by him. So, David, do you want to go ahead and start with maybe your new guy?
I mean, one of the things we were talking about is how fun doing these rookie tiers are. I mean, like Justin said in our running back video, we're probably hitting over 60 rookies between the 4 tier videos. So we get to bounce some names off each other that like a little shakier on. And for me, that was Daquan Wright was one of the big names. Gosh, can you guys hear that right now? Over 2 yards per out run. He's a big guy. He tested really well at the combine. One thing that stood out to me is they trusted him to block at Ole Miss. He was out there for a ton of blocking snaps. So you got a big guy, over 10 yards after catch per reception. That's over 10 yak per reception, almost 2 missed tackles or 0.2 missed tackles forced per attempt. Pretty good with the ball in his hands. You know, as far as guys to throw a dart on, you give me a big, fast guy who can block, who can do things with the ball in his hands. That sounds pretty great to me.
That number, 10 yards after catch per reception, that's a first down per reception after the catch. Kind of crazy here. Tanner Koziel here is a guy that I've been more in tune with over the process. There was a time where I would have considered him pretty close to the tier 3 guys. He's still just 22. Yards per route run, decent, 2.26. I love that from a tight end. First downs per route run, 0.13. So those are some receiving metrics that are honestly decent for a wide receiver. I think, of course, we're seeing him playing for Houston. The competition's not going to be quite the same, but I do think he's shown some decent stuff. I would love to see a little more yak ability from him. Like, that's something that separates Wright really from, I mean, honestly, most players, right? You know, he's double pretty much anyone in this tier, but definitely a name that I'm pretty interested in. I don't hate any 22-year-old tight end really stash him on the taxi squad, especially we play tight end premium, and these are guys that I think are very valuable round 3 or 4 picks in tight end premium, depending on where they go.
Yeah, Tanner Koziel actually has PFF's best receiving grade. When you look at the Power 4 guys with at least 30 targets, he has the most receptions. Eli Stowers had 62, was second. Tanner Koziel had 74 receptions, and he is a big guy. His catch radius is huge. Contested target rate's almost 30%, and no yak. Like, that's the only reason I don't have him in tier 3, because the production is awesome, but I think he's going to be an insane red zone threat. Like, as a rookie, he's going to be a red zone threat, and he could still grow to be a better tight end of receiving the other aspects of the receiving game as well. I'm going to go ahead and mention Dallin Bentley. He's somebody that's been on my radar here. I know a lot of people around the league really like him. He was at the Shrine Bowl, and I heard that everybody was saying after the Shrine Bowl, he's definitely going top 100. We'll have to see about that. When you look at PFF, he had the 3rd best receiving grade in this class. He is old. Like, I don't love that part of it, but when you look, the yards per route run is good. The contested target rate, it's fine. Missed tackles force is solid. The yak per reception. And also, he does play a decent amount in line, about 55%. So I just think he's a ready-made kind of a player that some tight end NFL teams are going to say, I can plug him in from day one, and he could receive for me, and he can block in line. So not a huge fan of him, but I everything I hear is that he's going to be a high draft pick, and I think his profile is solid enough to include him here.
Endries, I'm not even sure how to say his name. Tight end out of Texas. I'm just curious, guys. I hadn't really heard too much of him before we started to actually dive in here. What separates him from the tier 5 guys? Why is he with these other guys? I think we've made some strong cases for why we find them interesting.
This year was not great when he was at Texas. Like, definitely was not what we expected. But before that, I mean, he had a 2.13 yards per hour run as a sophomore in 2024. He was one of those guys that was talked about as, maybe the next tight end 2 or 3 coming into the year. I'm not sure why it didn't work in Texas. I don't know if it was a fit thing, but I still hear him talked about like he's going to get strong draft capital, and he does have that early production kind of to to bang upon. And one other note that was interesting on Jack Andrews here, and he is somebody that does win at the catch point as well. His contested catch rate is one of the highest like in this entire class as well. I mean, Koziel he's hard to beat, and Justin Joly is awesome. It was those three guys they ranked very, very highly with just in the last decade for contested catch rate. So I was kind of surprised to see Jack Andrews with those two guys specifically. So I do think that there's something there to him as a receiver.
Absolutely. It's kind of hard to separate some of these guys at this point, and I think it's just only going to get murkier as we go on to tier 5 here now. So tier 5, our biggest tier of the night. Got 6 people here. Joe Royer of Cincinnati, Oscar Delp, the Georgia Bulldogs, Eli Raridon, Fighting Irish, Lake McCree, that's a nice name, USC, Josh Cuevas, Alabama, and John Michael Gillenberg, looks like the Wyoming Mustangs. Big tier, lots of guys, and I'll be honest, up until we started actually putting all of this together, I wasn't really too familiar with any of these guys. Who really are the names that you think have the biggest chance of truly ascending? JP, you said 16 guys you care about. Who are some of those guys in this tier?
If you listen just like the league sentiment around Oscar Delp, I feel really, really good about him going day 2. And I want to send you a clip of this play of his, but his acceleration and speed is really, really awesome. And we were going to see him test. He was going to test, but then they found a hairline fracture in his foot right before the combine. Unfortunate, we didn't get to see that. He doesn't have much receiving production at all. He's been somebody we've been hearing about for a long, long time. And I've been like, why is he talked about so highly? But then you see the athleticism is really, really awesome. Not somebody I might not draft him, maybe we'll see. But I think that there is a very strong upside with him. And one other guy I think I like the upside of here is John Michael Gillenborg. He came in with a 9.9 RAS score, and his receiving production, if you just look at the raw numbers, isn't going to really pop a whole lot, but he played in some really, really bad passing offenses. I sent a tweet out about this because after the combine, I was like, who is this guy? Let me look deeper into him. But the play was terrible, and he was injured multiple seasons, but even despite that, he had a college dominator of 76th percentile. He's got the size that's 6'5", 250 pounds, and the athleticism. So I'm like, okay, he's checking a lot of boxes here for me. Even the production one, like shockingly, to where he at least is somebody that I think does have upside despite kind of being off the radar.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I don't think that any of these guys, I would say, separate from the rest of them. Gillenberg's got a really cool name. He tested really well at the combine. Delp's really athletic. McRae, pretty decent with the ball in his hands, gets used down the field a little bit. Raridan, good yards per out run. Royer, we thought he was going to do a little bit more this year, but he's had some decent production throughout his career. Cuevas looked pretty good. Any of these guys get a chance to be a starter, especially in a tight end premium, there's someone you're going to be happy to put on your bench.
Is this a tier that you are pretty much ignoring, though, in non-tight end premium? Unless if Delp does get that round 2 draft capital, day 2 draft capital, I guess, that JP is saying, we have to listen to that. But we maybe listen to that in the 4th round or the waiver wires of a non-tight end premium where it's pushed up. But is this kind of no man's land if we don't have a tight end premium involved, guys?
I mean, taxi squad, potentially, but that's it.
I mean, a non-tight end premium, definitely less interested in this tier. And if it's a shallow league, like our Melo Dynasty league, I'm not going to roster these guys.
It's my thoughts. Exactly. So I have a decent number of tight ends we're interested in here. Again, tier 5 is really just tight end premium primarily only interest, but it's a decent tight end class, right? I'm pretty excited off the cusp here in a tight end premium league. I'm pretty interested in drafting everyone through tier 4, and then tier 5 the NFL draft can tell me if I should be interested in them as well. So that's a lot of players that, we have some interest in. And I think we do have some truly elite upside here. I'm curious just what we've seen recently from rookies, right? We've seen it from Bowers. We've seen it last year, We had 2 guys. We had Warren, we had Loveland. Does that increase, and maybe falsely or in a way that it shouldn't, our perception of these top 2 guys as potential producers year 1 guys?
I think maybe so, because I don't think he's Kenyon Sadiq, Eli Stowers. They're not on the level of Brock Bowers was one of the best prospects. And also Loveland and Warren, I think, were super, super good prospects. I mean, in a good quarterback, in a good draft overall, it was a solid draft. They both went top 12. Yeah, very, very high, and were huge impact players. So I think that might be changing the perception a little bit. I mean, Laporta went early day 2, and he was impactful as well. So I think there is a door for kind of that pathway. I don't want to compare them to those prospects because those three, Loveland, Warren, and Bowers, like they're not on that level. They're definitely not.
Pretty much, I think JP covered it there pretty much. We used to think tight ends would take forever to produce because they used to. We're seeing that less and less, but he's still got to be the right. Sadiq's a freak athlete and his upside is insane, but his production wasn't quite there. He's a little bit younger, so I don't know if I trust that. Stowers is a quarterback converted to a tight end who probably needs to bulk up a little bit if he's going to do NFL tight end things. So I don't know if we have that player this year, but we could be surprised. I think long term too, like we've said, that this is going to be a really good class.
Do we actually like Stowers? Maybe a little bit more year one production. I guess second question is, if that's the case, do you think he has the chance to actually pass Trigg in value in season if he's actually maybe producing a little bit more, which past production is a decent indicator of future production, even if it is just college production?
You mean Sadiq there? If you're looking for production this year, the answer is probably trade for a veteran because you know what you're going to get. But yeah, I mean, you probably pick up some extra capital to move down. I kind of like Sadiq better long term, so I think most situations I would need a little bit more than maybe you guys would to move down to Stowers, but I don't think that's a bad process move.
Honestly, I think it's a great question when you look back on just last year with Tyler Warren and Colson Loveland, right? I mean, if Stowers does go, I mean, it's the draft capital for me. If he goes top 40, round one, I think in that scenario, that actually might be a good way to go. Is if you need the production, go Stowers. You can probably flip him later. I mean, what could you trade? What kind of plus were you getting to go from Tyler Warren to Colson Loveland like week 7 last year? You're getting a first, maybe close to 2 firsts. That's what it was looking like. So I do think that is a point because Sadiq still does have to grow. And Stowers, if he does get that capital, he's going to be deployed as a receiving weapon right away. They're going to have a plan for him unless it's just a terrible organization.
Yeah, it's just if we do really like Sadiq long term, is the best buying window for him in the draft, or is it when he's not producing? Assuming he is not producing, right? There's also the possibility that he does just start to produce. So everything I'm saying is a risk play. But if you have a gold where you want to get this, exposure to him, say you have 10 leagues and you want him in 3 of your leagues, it's a pretty high exposure. Maybe you draft him in 2 and try to trade for him in the 3rd if he drops in price, just as like a theoretical way of trying to approach that. Anything really else to add about the tight end position? I think we kind of talked about our philosophy in non-tight end premium, where guys past this point we aren't that interested in. Alrighty, well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dyno Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dyno Construction Podcast, until next time.